On today's episode of Locked On Wild, so Columbus wants a hockey trade, eh? Looks like Patrik Laine may not be coming to Minnesota after all.
You're Locked On Wild, your daily podcast on the Minnesota Wild, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's happening, everybody? Welcome into another episode of Locked On Wild, your daily Minnesota Wild podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. We thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen each and every day. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast platform so you don't miss out on any new episodes throughout the week. Today's episode of Locked On Wild is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. With the playoffs in the rearview mirror, the sports just aren't sporting the way we would like them to. But this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right, there is something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. On today's episode of Locked On Wild, Alex Micheletti joins us, and we're going to talk a lot of Columbus Blue Jackets today. But there are wild ties, don't worry. We're going to talk first about the latest in the Patrik Laine trade sweepstakes, because Laine was taken off the player assistance program, and so he is open for business and wants to move on from Columbus. We'll talk about Dean Evason heading to the Blue Jackets and the World Junior Summer Showcase. Guess who putting on a show so far? I'll give you a hint. Minnesota Wilds landed him in the first round of the NHL draft this past draft. Yeah, that's right. Zeev Buium having a showcase so far. So we'll talk about all that. My name is Seth Topol, your daily Minnesota Wild insider, joined as always by Alex Micheletti here to kick off the week. And Alex, we knew it was going to happen at some point. And so to kind of lead into our Patrik Laine discussion, let's start with Dean Evason going to Columbus. This is going to be an interesting fit. I had Jay on from Locked On Blue Jackets last week to break it down when it first happened, but I wanted to get your thoughts on Dean going to Columbus. Hope those coaches have body armor or a vest at least, because game-winning punches are going to be thrown in Columbus here.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting too that guys that he would have taken with him to coach already have spots. Darby's with Nashville and Woods is in Seattle. So it'll be interesting to see who he decides to go with for assistant coaches. Because it's kind of an awkward time to hire a coach. Just because a lot of people already that you would want as candidates already have jobs. So yeah, that'll be interesting. But I think it's a really good fit. And the funny thing too is he has another Kirill. So because Columbus has a Kirill on their team. So it's just funny. But it's a kind of a team in transition, new GM too. So we'll see what they do. They just re-signed Kent Johnson the other day, one of their highly touted first round picks. So got him on a really team friendly contract. So yeah, we'll see. These young guys are going to be put into shape quick by Dean, I think, and hopefully for his sake, Merzlikins can start off better than what Gus and Fleury did last season, because ultimately I think the goaltending really did Dean in last year with the Wild. So hopefully he gets some good goaltending early.
That would be nice. And I kind of talked about it last week too. Is he the guy to get them to like a legitimate Stanley Cup contender? Number one, I don't think they're even close to that. So that's important too. But I think where he's at and where Columbus is at, coming off of all this mess with Mike Babcock and, having to scramble to find a coach early, like late in the game. Like you had your guy, and so that's the last thing that you're looking at. And then he started looking at everybody's phones, and they decided, well, we can't have this, so we gotta make a change. So just having all that chaos, having Dean in is going to provide some just stability. Like they'll be very structured. You know, there'll be a pretty set plan as to how everything is done. So I think in that aspect, he can certainly help Columbus. But it is interesting that, you know, the other part of this that factored in that I had no idea about until like reading up on it is this ultimately happened because Kyle McClelland was too expensive to negotiate an agreement with the Kings, because for whatever reason, when you are negotiating with a coach that is still employed by a previous team, you essentially pay that team for however many years are left and negotiate a salary like on top of that. And so McClellan making $5.5 million is the reason that he didn't go to Columbus. But the other part of this that is crazy to me too, Alex, is you talked about Bob Woods and Darby Hendrickson. Bob Woods, who ran the penalty kill for the Wild forever,
Yes.
running the power play in Seattle, and Darby Hendrickson, who was responsible for, you know, the defense and for faceoffs, is running the power play in Nashville. And I mean, the obvious answer here is that coaches are pretty multifaceted, but it's crazy that you had two guys who didn't work out coaching one thing that go to other spots and they're coaching something else.
Yeah, it just completely, the personnel is definitely different on both of those two teams, but yeah, very, very interesting. Darby's walking into a really, really nice spot in Nashville, and it's a little bit, different than Seattle, but
Yeah.
just, very, very, very interesting. Yeah. And, Seattle's got the first, full-time female assistant on their coaching staff too, so yeah, that'll be interesting to see how that works out, and good on the Kraken for doing that. But yeah, just very, very, very interesting.
The one that we're all waiting on, and I don't know if it will happen, but we would certainly like it to, because, and we'll talk more about this with Patrik Laine, like, Freddie, you want to go to Columbus? Like, let's just put this out there right now. Let's just say Bill Guerin approaches Freddie about going to Columbus, because let's think about what's happened to Gaudreau since John Hines took over. He's been dropped in the lineup. He's not like the go-to face-off guy anymore. He doesn't do much on the power play. I think he still does penalty kill here and there. If Bill Guerin said, Freddie, do you want to go to Columbus? Do you think he would say no? Do you think he would be willing to waive to go somewhere where a coach believes in him and is going to be able to give him a little bit of an more elevated role?
Yeah, that one's interesting. He has a family now. I know he just recently had a kid, so that could be a big factor on, hey, do we want to move the family to Columbus? It's still in the Midwest, but that could be a big factor in everything. He's not obviously in school age yet, but yeah, I think, he's always had the most success with Dean.
Yeah.
And up until last season, that's a Columbus team where there isn't a whole lot of roster spots firmly set. So he would probably get more playing time in Columbus. And so if he wants to prolong his career, successfully, why wouldn't you turn down that chance to go with the coach where you've had the most success? And with Hines, maybe there's just not, they don't see eye to eye. So but the thing with moving Freddie too is just the length of his contract too. That's what,
Yep.
do you want to take on all that? It's not how much he's getting paid, but it's the years for Freddie.
Thankfully, it's not like, could you imagine if he was making like three and a
Oh,
half, or thankfully it's only 2.
It'd be impossible to move.
Yeah,
just I know
really
I know the cap is going up, but still, it's for what he gives you production wise, that would be tough to swallow.
I'm thinking and again, I'm not in his head, so I can't really speak to like what he's thinking about, but I would imagine if he doesn't improve his production this year, that he's probably going to be a candidate to be bought out. And so that's why I kind of floated out there, because at the end of the day, wants to stay as an NHLer. And so if things do improve, then obviously this talk tampers way down. But if not, maybe at the trade deadline, it's, hey, get me out of here.
Right.
But we'll see.
Yeah.
Patrik Laine came off the player assistance program, and so he is open for business in terms of a potential trade. But turns out Don Wadell is going to try to operate this much like Bill Guerin does his trades. And so we'll talk about if a potential Patrik Laine trade is even feasible, considering what Columbus wants. That's on the way as we continue today's episode of Locked On Wild after this. Today's episode of Locked On Wild is brought to you by FanDuel. In the wide world of summer sports, there just aren't as many going on as during the winter. We've got the NHL, you've got the NBA, you got a little bit of the NFL going on, but here in the summer, it's pretty much Major League Baseball or bust. Now, that has been helped by the Olympics getting started, and so there are competitions going on the daily, but FanDuel is going to help make your summer even more eventful, even when the sports aren't sporting the way we want them to. All you have to do is open the FanDuel app and dream up bets anytime you are in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There is something for everyone every day, all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Welcome back to today's episode of Locked On Wild. Once again, we thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen each and every day. For your second listen, make sure, if you haven't already, that you check out our crossover with Locked On Predators. Had a great time talking with Ann. We got to know Yakov Trenin a little bit better. And Ann gave the inside scoop as to what exactly prompted Barry Trotz to pull the plug on the team trip to go see U2. It's definitely worth the listen, because she was actually there the night it happened. So make sure to tune into that here today as well. A double episode Monday for you to get the week started. Alex, let's talk about Patrik Laine. He came off the player assistance program, and it's pretty widely known that he would like to move on from Columbus, because they're just not in a position to be a threat at this point. And that's kind of what he wants at this stage in his career. Now, he is still on the young side. He's 26, I believe, heading into this season. But there are some massive hurdles that I think are going to make this really tricky for the Minnesota Wild. Number one, his salary is north of $8 million. It's like 8.4-ish, I think. And it's for this year and for next year too. Also, hurdle that Don Wadell, the new general manager of the Blue Jackets, came out and said that he's looking for a hockey trade in this situation. He wants somebody that you can, put on the roster, a young up-and-comer to add to their mix, not necessarily picks and prospects. And so here's where this becomes a problem for the Minnesota Wild. He doesn't want to retain salary either. And I don't think there's any way that this happens for the Minnesota Wild unless salary is retained. And if Columbus does not want to do that, then you're going to have to entice them to do it. which means that you're going to have to pay a higher price, which, as I talked about with Isha on the Soda Pod today too, then you're getting into those guys that are pretty untouchable. And I'm just not willing to move one of those guys to make this happen.
Yeah. Like you mentioned, it would probably take a Marco Rossi to, and I know people don't want to go down that route, but that's what it would take if they want a hockey trade, because he's a guy that can give Columbus skill. He's not making a ton of money, but that would be the hockey trade that you're talking about. Obviously not Matt Boldy, but they would love Matt Boldy. But that's what it would take. And then probably a couple, they have the prospects, but you would have to give up, because Marco's got the, he doesn't have a no trade on his contract. So that's what it would take. And obviously retaining, but I think in any trade that they're going to make, they're going to have to retain to get him. I mean, I don't see it happening with any team without them retaining money. So yeah, we'll see. For his sake, I'm glad that he's out of the program, and from what we've seen from like Instagram, he's been working out, and so it's good to see him back and getting back in hockey shape. And we'll see. Top 5 picks don't, like I've been saying on Twitter to people, they don't become available too often, and so that's why Bill Guerin is interested. And I know fans don't want to see Marcus Johansson in the top 6 role, so that's I know Bill Guerin wants more scoring, so that's why he's interested. And Laine has the size, and the Wild lack size up front, and so that it's it makes sense why he's interested. It's not just out of the blue. There's clearly a need there, and I know people want to see Ogren there, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. But like you said, as this goes further, it might look less and less. But if a team gets desperate, or if they run out of options, they can always circle back to the Wild, and we'll see.
I threw out with Isha that why do I feel like Anaheim is kind of a sneaky good place for him to go? It is a team that maybe is still a little too far away, but it's a young team. They can fit his salary on the books, no problem.
They have so much cap space, yeah,
and they have young talent that would be appealing to Columbus. In return, it would be a similar type trade to what happened with Cutter Gauthier, where you send like a young piece, Trevor Zegras, back to Columbus in return. And I feel like that is a much more appealing route for Columbus to go to make this happen.
Yeah, Verbeek, the GM, did not draft Zegras, so I don't know. I think he ruffles feathers there for what he brings all off the ice and everything, and and just his style of play on the ice too. Yeah, we'll see. I mean, he has all the talent in the world, but I don't know. If he can fully put it together, then that's where you could really see some magic. But he hasn't fully reached that potential there.
No.
So I think they enjoy Troy Terry more, and Gauthier is going to be a rock star there. And they just didn't spend in free agency, so they
didn't do anything,
which was just nuts because they had all the cap space in the world. I know they were trying to get in the Stamkos sweepstakes, but Stamkos was never going to go there because he's in the part of his career where he wants more rings.
Anaheim has $21 million in cap space right now, and so you could take all of the Patrik Laine salary and not even think twice about it. So it'll be interesting to see what they do. It'll be interesting to see where he goes, because winning is certainly one aspect of this puzzle, but the return is going to be another. And so I was kind of lukewarm on this to begin with, mostly because of the injury stuff. So
defensively too, but I mean,
also
that guy can score, and he has scored a lot of amazing goals against the Wild too. I was just looking up like highlights of him. Remember this? I think it was 2018, and he scored a goal and he did the violin to the Wild bench. Yeah, I'll have to send it to you. He put his stick because he pretty much put the game on ice. That was just a stone cold celebration. But I mean, when he's full go, Patrik Laine, he is so much fun to watch.
And it's crazy too. He's been in the league for a long time for being 26.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's still got good years in front of him. It just, to me, it comes down to the injuries, and it comes down to, you're not getting anything on the defensive side of the ice. So
it's just, it is what it is, right, for him. But, when I just, there's still so much there that we haven't seen from him too. He's got a long career ahead of him, and I hope wherever he goes, if it's not the Wild, I hope he can get back on track. Just because I think everybody enjoys watching him play, at least on the offensive side of things. I'm sure he drives Columbus fans and Winnipeg before that, defensively, but you take the goals too that come with it.
Yes, you do. And speaking of a potentially long career, Minnesota Wild draft pick Zeev Buium is off to a great start in the World Junior Summer Showcase. So we'll talk about him and why this reinforces that he's going to be here sooner than later. That's coming up as we finish today's episode of Locked On Wild after this. One final segment of today's episode of Locked On Wild. Once again, we thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen each and every day. Make sure after you are done watching today's episode, you hang out for the first of its kind 24/7 streaming channel. Locked On Sports Today brings you all of your favorite shows, your favorite personalities, your favorite topics without just sitting on both sides of a table and yelling at each other. I heard this. I was in the car and I heard this on the radio the other day, and it drove me nuts. The two hosts just they just continued to try to elevate over the other, and it led to just an absolute screaming match. And I'm like, this is exhausting. So you don't get any of that with Locked On Sports Today. And even better, if you hang out after today's Locked On Wild episode, you'll go straight to Locked On Sports Minnesota. So it'll be Minnesota centric 24/7. You can find it on YouTube or the Amazon Fire TV channels app. All right, Alex, let's talk about Zeev Buium a little bit. He took part in the World Junior Summer Showcase, or is taking part, I should say. And you were telling me about just this unbelievable spinorama that he had. But let's just kind of focus this on the much bigger topic that I continue to try to hammer home for the listeners, for the everydayers. The moment that Denver season is done, I will bet my life within a week he is going to sign his ELC. The Wild will burn a year, and he'll be here to just see how the inner workings of the NHL go.
Yeah, he looked so comfortable on the X ice for the Frozen Four. I mean, he's incredible. The skating ability is that's NHL ready. Now it's just about just getting even stronger than he was. He was the youngest one of the youngest players in college hockey, and he put up 50 points. And like we were talking about off air, I mean, most college players, they don't even get 50 points in their career. So for him to do that as a freshman defenseman is just bonkers. And that Denver team is just going to be just as strong. And so it's going to be super, super fun to watch him again. And NCHC is going to provide him the best competition again. He'll be playing against North Dakota, and St. Cloud and Colorado College, all these really, really skilled, teams. And so, he's going to sign right away. He'll go right into the lineup. It'd be cool if the Wild made the playoffs, because he could do like Cale Makar did by going from the Frozen Four, right from UMass into the lineup for the Avalanche, and he scored in his first game. So that'd be cool to see if Zeev could do that. But he's ready to make that team right away. I don't see him needing a lot of time in Iowa. You put him right in and let him get to work, because that skating will help him in any fashion.
Yeah, and it's, I've talked about this too. I'm glad you brought that point up, because it's a situation with Buium that are all of his tools fully developed? Not yet, but the tools that are good enough to mask the ones that need work. Like,
right.
He's got good enough NHL skill that he's going to be able to come to the NHL level. And yeah, there may be games where it looks like he's kind of trying to figure it out, but his overall talent is good enough to get him there immediately. Like, this is like what we saw with Brock Faber, where, he played in the Frozen Four with the Gophers, and within like a week or two, he was with the NHL team.
Right.
Because some guys are just ready to be fast-tracked, and it's not like you're talking about just a guy who had a good season, a decorated season. He was the National Collegiate Hockey Conference Rookie of the Year and Offensive Defenseman of the Year in his freshman season. Like, at some point, there's nothing more for you to accomplish. And on the Iowa front, some guys need some seasoning down at that level. Zeev does not.
Now, putting him in people have to realize too, with that team too, they are struggling so much. You don't want to put him in an environment where he's out there and he's with a D partner that's gonna, then they end up, -3, -4 on the night. That does not help him at all. And he has the skills. He has NHL skills already right now, and he may be better than Faber, which that's going to get people even more excited. He has a better offensive game than Faber. So, it just that is clearly evident. And he has more experience, on the the power play side of things than Faber. But he's so much fun to watch. I'm glad. I'm so glad that other teams said no. We'll pass on this guy when there was teams in front of the Wild that clearly needed defensemen too. But it sometimes works out where a guy falls in your lap, and just kind of like this Fiala Faber trade. It's really worked out for the Wild too. So just imagine if they pair those two up together at some point. That would be just so much fun to watch.
Elite. Yeah, we're looking at you, Danny Briere. We felt like we had players with similar skill sets to Zeev in our system already, and so we just didn't feel the need to add another one. It's like,
and even if that's the case, you move one of them that's already there,
right?
I would definitely take Zeev over Cam York. Just like you can, just because they have similar doesn't mean you can't move one of them that's already there.
Yeah, if you're going into a draft and you're like, oh boy, this player is available and is really, really good, but we've got this guy and we've got this, you're doing it wrong. Like, you are in position where you deserve to have the wool pulled over your eyes, because if you're not going BPA, just stay out. Like,
right.
That whole thing was still just insane to me. That we're about a month removed, and it's still insane to me that played out the way it did for the Minnesota Wild. Like, we just got lucky. Wild just got lucky.
Super lucky. Then that sometimes happens in the drafts, and then it can set franchises back. A good year. Good decade. So that's it just worked out, and after the Stramel kind of just kerfuffle disaster, well, he has time to turn that around, but this is a good makeup for that for sure.
Yes, it is. Well, that's what we've got for you here today. So best of luck. Best of luck to Dean Evason in Columbus. I would say the odds of a Patrik Laine trade at this point for the Minnesota Wild are at about 10%. It just doesn't feel likely for them to be able to match what Columbus is looking for. And I mean, unless they get Philip Gustafsson involved, but even then you've got to include a forward because you have to make room. You don't have room to add Laine to the mix without having a forward going the other way. There are a lot of hurdles, and so it's moving towards less and less likely for me. But obviously, until it actually happens, it's going to continue to be discussed. It's insanely quiet right now. So we'll see what happens. But thank you for tuning in to today's second episode of the day. Make sure to hit that like button so you don't miss out on any new episodes throughout the week. And stay tuned on Wednesday. We've got a massive announcement about something that will be taking place between August 1st and the start of the NHL season. So stay tuned. More details coming. But until then, you can find new episodes of Locked On Wild every Monday through Friday as part of the Locked On Podcast Network.